than the male is. I think on the kestrel, it's about 10% larger. The female is about 10% larger than the male. And the kestrel has a couple of calls. The one call that we hear kestrels all the time make is this killy, 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 or clee, 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 clee call. And I'm going to play it right now. So that kestrel gives that call anytime it's excited, and it could be positive excitement or negative excitement. I've seen a kestrel come in to the nest box, fly toward the nest box carrying food and giving that call to say, hey, here I am, and here comes the food. I've also seen kestrels give that call when there's Cooper's hawk in the area, and the kestrel goes out to intercept it. So positive or negative, that's their common call. There's another call that kestrels give when they're in an intimate situation, two adults together, or when they're coming into the nest box with chicks sometimes. And now, of course, I've never heard a kestrel coming into the nest box giving this call, but on some of the nest cameras that we have online, when kestrels come in to feed their young chicks, you'll hear this call. Okay, now the male and female kestrel are unique among the birds of prey, as far as I know. Among all the others, I think all the others, the male and the female look alike, at least to you and me, they look alike. Kestrels, they are, the term is called dimorphic. The males and the females differ in their appearance. So this is a male here, and the easiest way to tell the male is if you get a view like this, where you can see the spread tail. That reddish tail with a wide black band on the end is a dead giveaway that that's a male. The female is just mostly brown and just has sort of narrow barring on the tail. So here's a female. I actually think this might be a young female, because I think she should have a little bluish coloring up here on top of the head, but the tail is pretty much just the same brownish coloring with barring, as are the wings. The male also has bluish coloring on the upper surface of the wings. So taxonomy, where does the kestrel fit in the world of birds? Well, okay, I'm sure you can read this chart here, but maybe it would be better if we zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in on this part of the chart right down here. Okay, this is showing the relationship of the orders of birds. And as you move from left to right, every time there's a fork in the road here, that means that there was a common ancestor. Now, up here, we have the hawks and the relatives. And I think on your screen, you can see New World vultures above this. On my screen, it's covered up by other stuff that the presenter gets. So anyway, this is pretty much all of the diurnal raptors except for the falcons. So, and these hawks, so this includes the eagles and ospreys and the buteos, the accipiters, the harriers, and so on. And they are most closely related to the New World vultures, which I believe are up here. Now, the falcons are way down here. So the falcons are more closely related to the parrots and the passerines. The passerines being sometimes called the songbirds or the perching birds. So the falcons are much more closely related to parrots and the perching birds than they are to the rest of the raptors, the diurnal raptors. And here on the current checklist of the Minnesota Ornithologists Union, you can see that the falcons are there between the woodpeckers and the flycatchers. Now, there's one little anatomical feature that falcons have that no other birds have. I think that's true. And it is the tomial tooth. The upper mandible and the lower mandible are notched so they fit together nicely. And this is a great tool. It allows a falcon with a quick bite to sever the spinal cord of its prey and immobilize the prey. Now, the accipiters have kind of a hint of this tomial tooth, but it's not nearly as well developed as it is in the falcons. So, American kestrel, found pretty much all over North America and South America, except where there's not any open territory, open area, like in the Amazon here. There's not much open space for kestrels there. And up here, probably because there aren't any trees. They have to have open space, but they need some trees also. And there are 17 recognized subspecies in the Americas, subspecies of the American kestrel. Okay, this shows the breeding range, the non-breeding range, and the year-round. This would be the wintering range here, and you can see that the wintering range extends up just to northern Iowa in this diagram. In other words, in the winter, you shouldn't be seeing kestrels up here. That's not really true. Some kestrels do hang out all winter in Minnesota, and especially in the Twin Cities. I think it's unusual not to have any kestrels here in the winter, but you don't go out in January and expect to see a kestrel. So the diet. Now, this is one thing that kestrels really have going for them. They'll eat just about anything that moves and that is small enough for them to be able to capture and kill. They probably eat more arthropods than anything else, grasshoppers, beetles, dragonflies, and so on. But they also eat a lot of small mammals, voles and mice, and they eat a fair number of small birds and small snakes and lizards and frogs. Now, you may know that in the Sax-Zim Bog, there's a big kestrel nest box project. It's managed by Dexter Clinton Nienhaus and Frank Nicoletti. And in Dexter's report on their last season, he said that in the nesting season, the kestrels up there are eating primarily insects. Now, my experience here in the Twin Cities and with our nest boxes is that when the kestrels are coming in feeding their young, they're bringing almost exclusively small mammals. And I think that these mammals are meadow voles. It's a chubby little rodent with short legs and a short tail. And this shows their range up here. So like I say, up here in our latitudes, in my experience, the kestrels are pretty much living or feeding their young, these voles. It could possibly be another small mammal, but I believe they're meadow vole. Habitat requirements. They need pretty much open cover with open territory with short ground cover, because they get most of their food on the ground and they have to be able to see it to capture it. So any place that's grassy, like a pasture, is a really good habitat, or a recently fallowed field. They also have to have places to perch. So some scattered trees, dead trees are very nice, but they don't have to be dead. You see a lot of kestrels perched on utility wires. They also have to have cavities for nesting. It might be a cavity in a building, but typically, especially typically before a lot of people came along in North America, the nesting sites for kestrels would be woodpecker cavities. And they'll readily take to nest boxes also. The literature says that they need at least a 50-acre territory. I think that's highly variable. I think sometimes they need a lot more and sometimes less. It really just depends on the food supply. Okay, this looks like really great habitat here. This is, I would imagine, I don't know where this picture was taken, but this is a place where I would expect to find kestrels. This, on the other hand, is not. Okay, now, like I said, they need trees to perch on. They hunt probably 90% of the time, they hunt from a perch, but they can also take advantage of open areas for part of the time. If there's no place to perch, they're actually very good at hovering. Now you can see that takes a lot of energy, so they can't really make a living doing that. Here's a slow motion of the same thing. You can see how they use the whole body to try to maintain that head in a steady position. Okay, a couple of years ago, you may have seen reports that some scientists had determined that kestrels can see the urine that voles leave on the ground when they're running around in the grassy fields. Voles tend to create little tunnels on top of the ground, but in the grass, and they run around through these tunnels in the grass. And so this would, of course, be a great advantage for the kestrels if they could see that this is a place where voles run around, and they don't have to then waste their time hunting for voles or hovering, using up their energy in a place where there aren't any. Okay, well, this first quote here is from Cornell University. Unlike humans, birds can see ultraviolet light. And that's true. And continuing, this enables kestrels to make out the trails of urine that voles leave as they run along the ground. Well, the study that everybody is referring to here was done by some scientists in Finland. And whoa. You know what did that, Ben? Ben, are you okay? Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Julian.
Okay, good, thank you. So that study was done in Finland, and after it came out, then some guys in neighboring Sweden said, well, wait a minute, let's take a closer look at that. And they actually examined, now again, we're talking about the Eurasian kestrel here. They examined Eurasian kestrel eyes, and they examined the wavelength that vole urine, the wavelengths of the light that vole urine reflects. And they came to the conclusion that their data suggest that it is unlikely that bank vole and field vole urine provide any visual cue that raptors can use. So who knows? Unfortunately, we can't just ask the kestrels, but it's nice to think that the kestrels have some clue, so that they have a better chance for survival. Okay, migration. The kestrels that live in the more northern latitudes migrate, and they migrate farther south than the kestrels that live in the less northern latitudes. Here in Minnesota, they migrate, and I believe that banding records have shown that our birds probably migrate to the southern US, like Texas, maybe Mexico. So the birds in the mid latitudes, though, migrate short distances or not at all. They might just move around to find snow-free areas where they can find food on the ground. Now, most of our kestrels here in Minnesota head south in the month of September. The adult females and the juveniles leave first, and the adult males typically about a week later. Now, a reason for that is that has to do with molting of their flight feathers. Both the adult males and the females molt their flight feathers after the nesting season and before they migrate south. But the females molt about a week earlier than the males do. the juveniles, the young of the year, don't molt their flight feathers before their first migration south. So the adult females and the juveniles head south, and then about a week later, the males do. Now, studies have shown that the males and the females take separate winter vacations. The females claim a territory, they get there first, they claim their territories, and they don't share. And so the males generally get territories of lesser value than the females do. But they come back, the males return first, typically about a week before the females do. And if both the male and the females of a pair survive the winter and the migrations, when they return, they resume their partnership, and they really like being together. It's kind of fun to watch them because they do spend a lot of time just perching close together, and really, they seem to just really like to be with each other. I really like this photo of the male kestrel up here, and you can see the bluish color on the wing and the wide black band on the underside of the tail. And this is the female here. This photo was taken by our Kathy Seidels, a Saint Paul Audubon member, and it was taken near her family's farm in southern Iowa. Okay. Now, how do we know how the kestrels are doing, or how any birds are doing here? Well, the best information we have probably comes from the Breeding Bird Survey, the North American Breeding Bird Survey. It's carried out under the auspices of the U.S. Geological Survey, and it shows status and trends of bird populations. The first year it was done was in 1966. For many of the species, it didn't start until the next year, 1967. And the way this survey happens is that in every state, a bunch of survey routes have been defined, and they're the same routes year after year after year. Each route is 25 miles in length, and the surveyor stops every half mile along this route for 3 minutes and notes every bird that he or she sees or hears. So 25 miles, stopping every half mile means there are 50 survey points, and the survey is done on each route once a year at the height of the breeding season. So year after year after year, by doing this in the same place and at the height of the breeding season, we get a pretty good idea of the population trends. Now, this shows where all of the breeding bird survey routes are in Minnesota. Now, that looks like maybe I tried to do this, but this is not my work. This comes from the Breeding Bird Survey website. So yeah, each of those little worm-like black smudges represents a 25-mile route. This is kind of a composite map showing the density of kestrels in the years 2011 to 2015. And this is a map this is not showing Democrats and Republicans. This is showing the relative abundance of kestrels as determined by the Breeding Bird Survey routes. The blue color means that the kestrels are increasing in those states. The darker the color, the greater the increase. So you see there are not very many blue states there, and only one of them has a dark blue color. The red or orangish colors show decreases, and the darker red means greater decrease. So this is a pretty sad picture. Okay, now we get into some of the specific information about kestrels. One moment. This shows kestrels per breeding bird survey in the US and Canada, and from 1966 to 2019. That's the latest figures that we have are through the year 2019. The decline has been 52%. For Minnesota, the decline is a whopping 78%. And, you know, you drive out in the country now and you just don't see them the way you used to. They're not considered threatened or endangered, but they're just not there the way they used to be. And this is a pretty scary decline, and it seems to be continuing. So how is Iowa doing? Well, in Iowa, the trend is a little bit different. It's not declining. Iowa started out with a lot fewer kestrels, but in recent years, they've actually had more kestrels than Minnesota. And one thing that might have helped to produce this result is in 1983, a nest box program was started along Interstate Highway 35 in Iowa. So every mile along the interstate from the Missouri border to the Minnesota border, I think that's about 200 miles, there was a kestrel nest box they put them on the highway signs there. So there were about 200 kestrel nest box there, and they had about 50% occupancy. So it was very, very successful. I don't think that program still exists, but there have been other nest box projects or programs in Iowa. So maybe that's why their population has remained steady or even increased a little. I don't know. Now, the habitat that kestrels like sort of matches what we call oak savanna. So short grassy areas, short vegetation with scattered trees. And there are a lot of species of birds that like that same kind of habitat. And so if we look at how those species of birds are doing, well, let's take, for example, here's the northern flicker and red-headed woodpecker and eastern kingbird and brown thrasher, and this is the kestrel, the green line there, and eastern bluebird. Well, now this line, the line for the eastern bluebird is an exception. And the reason for that is almost certainly that in 1983, the Minnesota Audubon chapter started the Eastern Bluebird Recovery Project. And so the trend immediately started going up, and it's still up, although it looks like it's declining in the last couple of years. And then one more, the orchard oriole. So it's this line along the bottom here. And it's also showing an increase, although there are not very many of those birds. And my theory on that is that the orchard oriole is really a more southern bird. There have never been a lot of them in Minnesota. They're located, or their favored territory is to our south, but they are probably moving north, in my opinion, due to climate change. So anyway, the birds that seem to like the same kind of habitat that the kestrels like, it seems that they're all not doing very well. So maybe there's just something about this kind of habitat that is not being taken care of or is no longer serving their needs. Now, there have been some major nest box projects where people have put out anywhere from 50 to 150 nest boxes. And a researcher named John Smallwood has done a lot of investigation. John Smallwood and David Bird. By the way, let me just back up and say a lot of the information that I have about American kestrels comes from a publication called Birds. Well, it used to be called Birds of North America, and it was created by Cornell University. And Cornell has now updated and combined it with a lot of other databases around the world, and it's now called Birds of the World. And you can buy a subscription, or you can actually view this treasure trove at the Minneapolis Library, and you can look at it online. So that's where a lot of my information comes from. And the two major editors of the information on the American Kestrel are John Smallwood and David Bird, whom you see referenced here. So Smallwood talked to the people who were running 8 major nest box projects. They were located in Florida, Georgia, along the Virginia-Maryland line, and New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Saskatchewan, and Yukon Territory. And all of these 8 major nest box projects showed a similar pattern, that in the first 2 to 6 years of the project, the number of kestrels and the occupancy increased. After that, they all declined, and the decline averaged about 3% per year. And in the Yukon Territory, they went from over 100 boxes occupied to 0. Don't remember what the time span was, but it wasn't very long. Went from 100 to 0. Now, in all of these cases, the managers of the nest box projects said that they could not see any reason for this decline in their area. The habitat seemed not to have changed over the years, and the kestrels that were there, were nesting there, seemed healthy, and they were raising the expected number of chicks, and they seemed healthy. So they were saying the decline, the reason for it must be somewhere else, not on our areas where we've got the nest boxes. So it's, as far as I know, it's still a mystery as to why this happened. So what are some reasons, possible reasons for the decline of kestrels? Well, some people have suggested West Nile virus, but I think we can rule that out because the West Nile virus was first detected in North America in 1999. And you remember these charts from the breeding bird surveys show a steady decline from all the way back to 1966 or 67. So it's unlikely that West Nile virus is a major cause for the decline. All right, how about Cooper's hawks? Okay, Mr. Smallwood again did a lengthy investigation looking at the population trends of kestrels and Cooper's hawks, and determined that there was no evidence that increasing trends in Cooper's hawks populations were associated with the decreasing trends in kestrels. In other words, he's saying he doesn't think that Cooper's hawks are part of the reason for the decline in kestrels. However, the people at the Hawk Mountain Sanctuary in Pennsylvania say predation by Cooper's hawks in winter in eastern Pennsylvania is a leading cause of local mortality of kestrels. Now, Cooper's hawks are increasing in number. I'll get back to Cooper's hawks in a little bit. First, there are other possible reasons for the decline. Toxins, including insecticides, rodenticides. I don't think rodenticides could be part of the decline because we don't see other rodent-eating raptors declining the way kestrels are. Shortage of insects. Now, this is almost certainly having an effect on kestrels because kestrels depend so much on insects for their food. And we know that all over the world, there just aren't the number of insects that there used to be. Climate change might be playing a role also in that there's now more violent weather than there used to be. And this could particularly affect kestrels on their wintering grounds or in migration. Also, we have such crazy swings in the weather. And I'm thinking of the terrible winter we just had in Texas and other southern plain states. Loss of habitat, and I think this has got to be a major reason for the decline, if not the major reason for the decline of kestrels, because kestrel habitat is also just a place where it's really easy to either build on it or, in particular, to convert it from grassland to row crops. So this chart shows the population trends of the American kestrel, the blue line, the red-tailed hawk, the red line, and you can see red-tailed hawk is doing really well. So if rodenticides were a problem, I don't think that red-tailed hawk line would be ascending the way it is. And the Cooper's hawk down here at the bottom. Well, how could Cooper's hawks be a major factor in the decline of kestrels when there are so few of them? But now this is in North America, the increase in Cooper's hawks from 1966 to 2019 is a whopping 337%. And what about in Minnesota? Okay, kestrels, red-tailed hawks, Cooper's hawks down here on the bottom. And the increase in Minnesota of Cooper's hawks, they've increased tenfold since 1967. And we know that Cooper's hawks nest in our neighborhoods now. And I've seen Cooper's hawks in all of the parks where we have kestrels nesting in our nest box project. So I would not be surprised if Cooper's hawks were, like the people in Pennsylvania say, a major cause of the kestrel decline. So this brings me to the Saint Paul Audubon Kestrel Nest Box project. We got a grant. First, I should say it's a project of the Saint Paul Audubon Conservation Committee. And when we started, it was the committee was under the leadership of co-chairs Val Cunningham and Susan Salterman. And we got a grant from Audubon, Minnesota to pay for the first set of boxes and installed our first box at Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary near downtown Saint Paul. And lo and behold, that box was occupied. A pair of kestrels raised 5 youngs that very first year. Unfortunately, that box has never been occupied since then. So through the years, we added boxes, deleted boxes, moved boxes around. For the previous 3 years, 2018 to 2020, we've been kind of steady. I don't think we've moved any boxes around in those years. So we've had 8 boxes available each year. And during those 3 years, so that means there would be 24 possible nestings, and we've had 10 successful nestings in those 3 years, plus 1 nest that failed. That nest had 5 eggs in it, and the kestrels abandoned it, and or something happened to 1 or both of the adults. So, and in those 3 years, we've had 42 young fledged from the nest boxes. So I often refer to this as a modest project there. 8 nest boxes is not very many when you consider others in the area, like up in Saxon Bog, where last year they had 36 boxes and 17 were occupied. They say their goal is 50 boxes, but I think they're going to have a lot more than that, probably this year already. The other nest box program that I'm aware of nearby is at AHATS, the Arden Hills Army Training Site in Arden Hills Army Training Site, formerly known as TCAP, Twin Cities Army Ammunition Plant, and also simply known as the Arsenal. That's a project that was started by Saint Paul Audubon's Craig Andreessen a good number of years ago. And the literature tells us that the kestrel nest boxes should be about a ½ mile apart or more. Well, Craig violated that that advice. They've got 10 or 12 nest boxes in that AHAT site, and I'm sure that they're much closer than a ½ mile apart, but they've had a lot of success. And I talked recently with Mark Martell, who manages that project now, and this year they have 5 boxes occupied, and he thinks there will be at least 2 more occupied. So they've been having a lot of success for a good many years now. So this is where our nest boxes are located. I think you can see my cursor here. This one is down near downtown St. Paul. This is Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. Up here, this is the Rice Creek North open space and belongs to Ramsey County. And over here is the Tamarack Nature Center. also a Ramsey County feature. Over here in Washington County, we have 2 nest boxes at Lake Elmo Park Reserve. We have 2 nest boxes at the Bellwin Conservancy, just south of I-94. And we have 1 nest box at Afton State Park. And I think there will soon be another nest box there. We face some challenges in trying to place nest boxes. First of all, you need a place where kestrels are going to have enough habitat to raise a family. You need a big enough area and a place where there's food available for them. Also, we need a pole to mount the nest box on. Now, some people attach their nest boxes to utility poles along the roads. I once asked Xcel Energy if I would be allowed to. I actually wanted to move this nest box at Bruce Vento onto a utility pole, and Xcel has just a blanket policy that says no. So it's not a good idea to just put up a nest box and forget about it. So we have in Saint Paul Audubon, we recruited some wonderful volunteers to monitor the nest boxes during the nesting season, to go out and observe and let us know whether there are kestrels in the area, kestrels using the box, or other species too. The last thing we want is to be providing beautiful nest sites for European starlings. So we actually had to, I removed 1 box because kestrels hadn't used it for a few years and starlings were nesting in it. So I actually threw out the starling eggs. They're not protected, and then decided to just remove that box. So these are our wonderful nest box monitors. And I have to also give credit to the guy who does the heavy lifting, Gus Kutsuvas. Now, let me see. Okay, there are a number of nest box plans out there that you can use. The American Kestrel Partnership, I'll be talking about that pretty soon, puts out plans, and we like to have our nest boxes conform pretty much to those plans. I do tweak it a little bit when I make the nest boxes. And this design came as a result of my wife being very nervous seeing me up on a ladder trying to mount these nest boxes. So we came up with this idea. I first take this board up onto the ladder and attach that board to the pole, and then got these hooks on the back of the nest box where you can just hang the box on the board and then put in a couple screws here at the bottom to fasten it to the board. So here is Gus. Like I say, I used to do this, and then I found Gus, who volunteered to do this. He's about half my age and twice as strong, and he's an attorney, which means he has a lot of spare time. Well, just kidding, Gus. But you can see that it's not easy to get that nest box up there. It's bulky and kind of awkward. So here he's got it hooked over the backboard, we call it. And there's the finished product. This one happens to be at Tamarack Nature Center. Now, if you got a device like this, it's a lot easier. This is at Lake Elmo Park Reserve. The park management there did not like seeing me up on a ladder trying to do this. And so they took over responsibility for mounting the boxes. And we have to clean out the boxes also every fall. And so we have to take the box down, clean it out, maybe do some repair and put it back up. So at Lake Elmo Park Reserve, Gus and I don't do that. The park management there does it for us. Okay, American Kestrel Partnership. It's a wonderful organization. I'll just read this. A network of community and professional scientists working collaboratively to understand kestrel demographics and advance kestrel conservation. And as you can see, they have about 2,000 partners. Most organizations would call these members. Anybody can become a member or a partner. And the idea is that people who monitor or manage kestrel nest boxes report information to the American Kestrel Partnership. And so there are here 4,407 nests registered, and many thousands of observations from the people who are monitoring these nest boxes. And of course, we report information on our nest boxes to the American Kestrel Partnership. By the way, their offices are located in Boise, Idaho. And did I mention that they are, a branch of the Peregrine Fund. So this map shows kind of the densities of the nest boxes around the country. These are nest boxes that are for which people are reporting to the American Kestrel Partnership. The pins on their maps don't show the exact locations. They don't want to give away the exact locations, but you can pretty much tell if you know where the nest boxes are. And you can see each pin has a number in it to show the number of nest boxes there. So this is the Twin Cities area here. This cluster up here, I'm sure, is the Saxim Bog, that project up there. And I don't know who is operating this project up here. If anybody knows, I'd appreciate if you just let me know. And as you can see, there's a lot of kestrel nest box activity down here in Wisconsin. Okay, now it's time for some fun videos. These first two videos come from the American Kestrel Partnership in Boise, Idaho. For about 6 years, they had a camera in their nest box attached to their building, and they had kestrels nesting there for the first 6 years in a row, but they have not had kestrels the last few years, and they don't have the camera there anymore. But this is an interesting video that shows some competition for a nest box. Okay, there's a northern flicker comes in the box, and a male kestrel. And there's a struggle, but the flicker is big and strong. I mean, it's bigger than the kestrel is, so it escaped. But the male kestrel now has reclaimed the box, and he's checking his body parts, and he's looking up at the camera as if to say, "Hey, did you see that? Did you see what I did to that guy?" Yeah. Okay, now this one is a little more interesting. It's a more formidable opponent. A European starling. And this time it's going to be the female kestrel. And the battle is on. And let me tell you, this starling is a formidable opponent. And kestrels don't always win. They don't always win these battles with the starlings. And you can see that the starling's bill is quite a weapon. And the female has her hands full, female kestrel. Still going on. Now it seems the female has the upper hand. You would think that that starling would be almost dead by now, but it's not over, and the starling escapes. So I think that's just an amazing video, and you can see that the starling is quite an opponent. Okay, so when we the American Kestrel Partnership asks its members to report at least twice from each box during the nesting season, each occupied box. once when there are eggs in the box and once again when there are chicks in the box. And now the way we do it is, rather than get up on a ladder and open the box and look into it, we use a pole mounted camera. It's a lot easier. So this is what do you call it? A GoPro type camera, I guess, or a webcam maybe, that I just rigged up onto lengths of my roof rake handles, and it works pretty well. So look inside a box and sometimes you're surprised. Here we have a nest of tree swallows. And many of you probably know that tree swallows really like to feather their nests, so to speak. They use a lot of feathers in their nest. And this one had a particular liking for wild turkey feathers. So here we are in an house box with a kestrel here and this small snake. I believe this to be a smooth green snake. The information on the DNR website says that the smooth green snake loses its green color very quickly after it dies. So I think that's what that is. Here's a typical set of eggs. The clutch is usually 4 or 5 eggs. So that's what we like to see when we look in the box. This is also what we like to see. It seems that about 50% of the time when we're checking for eggs, there will be an adult in the box that doesn't leave. Often the adult who's in the box will leave when he or she hears us coming, but some of them just stay put. This is an adult female, and she just stayed there. And look, this little feather over here, I don't know where that came from, but I'm pretty sure it didn't come from a kestrel. And here's an adult male who just stayed on the eggs. Now, the females do most of the incubating, but males take probably 20 or 30% of the turns, or spend about 20 or 30% of the time of the incubation. Another female with 3 eggs, and I'm pretty sure there was a 4th one under there. And so sometimes it's hard to tell how many chicks there are. I numbered them here. These chicks, and by the way, the American Kestrel Partnership supplies an aging guide to help you guess how old the chicks are. And I think these chicks are somewhere around 5 days old. These are a little older, maybe 10 or 11 days old. There are 5 here also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the head of a chick here. And sometimes we take a video in the box to make sure we get everything. Now here, this is a video, and here I can see 1, 2, 3. This is the top of a head with a beak there, and 4. And when I start the video, look up here. 5. Okay, and these are 2 young guys, 2 males just out of the box, just recently fledged. Another great photo by Kathy Seidels. This was at the box at Afton State Park. When they're first out of the nest, they are very awkward, clumsy. They have short tails. They fly with great effort, and they land in a tree and kind of clamber around on the branches. It's just obvious that they're not very good at moving around, and I have to believe that they're extremely vulnerable at this stage to birds such as Cooper's hawks. Of course, the parents are close by, but I think they're still really vulnerable at this time. Okay, now we're going to see some videos that I took with my Nikon Coolpix camera attached with a video, what do we call it? Digiscoping attachment to my spotting scope. And these are from mostly the 2019 season and also some from the 2020 season. So, and they're all at the box, one of the boxes at Lake Elmo Park Reserve. So here you can see this is the adult male just landed at the box, and he's got a vole there in his beak. And as soon as I start the video, you'll see a youngster grab the vole and pull it in there. That was the female that just flew by the front above the box. So here, a male, the same male, arrived again at the box, landed on the pole up there, and he's got a vole, or what I believe to be a vole. And so we'll see what happens here. Oh, okay. What that was, let's go to the next one. We'll see that one again in slow motion. So this guy has brought a vole in. If he wanted to feed it to the chicks, he would have just flown down to the entrance and dropped it in the box. But no. What he does is he just drops down to the roof. It takes a little effort to do that. Backs up, gets positioned, puts it down to get a better hold of the vole, and he picks it up and says, "Here you go, sweetie." And she picks it up and says, "Thank you very much," and is on her way. This happens very frequently, that the male will bring home a treat for his mate. Okay, here, same nest box, different angle. Here's a young chick looking out of the box. This chick is very close to fledging. And when I start the video, the male is going to come in and fly or land on the top of the pole. There he is, the beautiful red tail with the black band. And he's got some morsel there that he's chewing on, and he's going to keep on chewing on for this length of this whole video. And down here, then a younger sibling says, "Hey, wait, move over, let me take a look too, let me take a look." And the older one says, "Okay, well, that's enough for you. This is my space now." So the older one has reclaimed the opening there, and pretty soon now you're gonna see this chick focus in on something that's approaching. Here it is. Here it comes. Watch. Oh, okay. This is the mom, the female, and let's take a look at that again. Slow motion. Okay, here she comes. And if you look closely at the front of the box, you'll see a shadow. There, see that shadow? The shadow of your vole when you are gone. So, so she came and dropped off this vole, and it was so quick that we couldn't really see what was happening. Okay, one more. Same box, different angle. I think this is the next year. So you can see there's a male kestrel up here with a small rodent, and he's going to deliver it. Here we go. Okay, that happened pretty quickly, and I meant to mute that audio, but that's okay. So here, let's look at that one again in slow motion. And watch the chick down there. The chick just grabs it very quickly, drops back in the box. Meanwhile, the female has come along to see how everything is going on. Okay, now there are several Nest cameras out there on the internet that can provide some entertainment. There's one in Utah, and there's one in or near Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, and there's one in Winnipeg. I think the one in Prairie du Chien is the farthest along. I checked today, and I think that the first chick there hatched yesterday. Now, when the kestrels are incubating the eggs, there's not very much activity there on the desk cam, but that one in Prairie du Chien should start picking up now. Now that the eggs are hatching, there should be more activity. You'll see adults bringing in food and feeding the chicks. Okay, I'm finished. I'd be happy to answer questions. Stuart or Ben, would you like to take over?
Yeah, if people want to type your questions into the chat, I can read them, and that way we can proceed in an orderly fashion rather than everybody competing. And meanwhile, I do have a question for you, Julian. It looks like your nest box is the material that is at the bottom is a, looks like might be wood shavings. Is that what you typically provide?
Yeah, what works really well is aspen chips, and you can get them at pet stores. You can get a big bundle of them. They're not very expensive, but they work very well. And we put about 2 or 3 inches packed down in the bottom of the box. But we change them every year. And recently I decided to change them even if the nest box was not used, because maybe there could be other critters that have gotten in there. So I thought, well, I might as well change them all.
Julian, what do the observers do?
Hi, Sherry. Well, we want to know what's happening at the nest box, whether it's kestrels or other species. And by observing, you can get a pretty good idea of whether the kestrels are incubating eggs and whether they're feeding chicks. So we just want to kind of have a good idea of what's going on there so that we can get out at the right time to photograph eggs, and again later to photograph the chicks.
How often do they go to look? This is from the ground and they just look up at it?
Yeah, we ask them to go out at least once a week and spend a half hour to an hour to see if there's any activity there.
Okay, it looks like Lauren has asked a question. Please comment on trends of habitat loss on wintering grounds.
Could you say that again? I couldn't quite understand it.
I'm sorry. Please comment on trends of habitat loss on wintering grounds.
Okay, habitat loss on wintering grounds. Well, you know, I think in our area here in the upper Midwest and this area, I think that the major cause of habitat loss is agriculture, corn and soybeans in particular. But of course, there's also construction going on everywhere. In the wintering grounds farther south, I know that in my home state of Florida, it's so overrun now by people and developments that a lot of habitat has just been lost to development. I'm not familiar really with Texas, whether there's a lot of loss due to agriculture and development there, but I would guess that there is there also. I can't really comment any more about that because I'm not familiar with those areas.
Okay, thank you. John says, any news about the kestrels at Saint Paul Airport?
Okay, the kestrels have nested at the airport for the last few years. People I've talked to tell me that they seem to have been nesting in the large airplane that's there as a training airplane. I was out there looking at it recently, and there are 2 holes, one on each side of the fuselage near the tail, and I'm wondering if that's where they were nesting. Kestrels have been observed there by a number of people again this year. I don't know that anybody has seen them entering those holes. I haven't heard any reports of anybody saying kestrels are nesting here or there. That place is about a mile direct line from our nest box at the Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary. And recently a kestrel from the airport was seen across the river, east of the airport, and then up north in the Dayton's Bluff area. So that's one reason why I haven't removed that nest box at Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, even though it has not been used since its first year, 2012. I still have the hope that kestrels will use it again, simply because the kestrels have been there at the airport all these years. And so I still have hope for that. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this, but Brad was wondering why the nest box at the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary is not being used.
Well, actually, I was actually very surprised that it was used the first year. There's a good bit of human traffic fairly close to that nest box. And also, the trains go by there very frequently, and they're very close. The trains are very close to the nest box. Now, that first year, the kestrels, they went ahead and they raised 5 young. So I guess they were okay with that. I don't know why they nested that first year and not again since then. But like I said, I keep holding out hope that they will someday nest there again.
All right, sorry. Are there vole counts done over the years? Question from Kathy.
Yeah, that would be interesting, but I'm not aware of that happening. I don't know.
And Judith asks, could a nest box be put in Sweet Hollow Park?
I don't think that would be a good choice. That might be a good choice for something like a screech owl, but I don't think it's open enough. One thing you have to be concerned about is predators climbing up the pole. We do wrap a sheet of aluminum around the pole to try to keep that from happening. But you don't want the nest box pole to be close to trees. You don't want any animals like squirrels or anything else to be able to jump onto the nest box. So it's a good idea to have it at least 50 yards away from any trees. So I don't think that Sweet Hollow, no, it's been a while since I've been there, but I don't think that would be an ideal habitat for a kestrel nest box.
Okay, are there other questions that people might have? Well, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. And if people don't speak up, I'm going to say going once.
I just want to say, Stuart and Julian, thanks for getting this rocking and rolling this evening. I apologize for my tardiness, and the camera just took a left, so it worked on the laptop.
Not a problem,
Okay.
Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for running this whole season. This actually is the conclusion of our season of presentations by Zoom, and hopefully next season we will at least at some point be back in person.
Very cool.
Yeah. So Julian, thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Julian. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, if people are still on, there is one more question from Mary. What about Louisville swamp oak savanna? I have not heard of that one.
I haven't heard of that either.
Okay.
It's way down the
Oh,
far
yeah.
southern end of the Minnesota River Valley.
Okay, I have heard of it, yes. But I'm not familiar with it. And that would be rather far afield for us St. Paulites. I mean, I don't want to have to travel too far to do this stuff.
Yeah.
I do hope that someday we can get a couple more boxes in more northern parts of Washington County, at least farther north than we have been so far, because I know that there are kestrels up there.
Mhm.
And what, do you need to have permission on property? Is that what you would need
Yeah, you need the habitat.
on the pole?
Yeah, and you need the property owner to be enthusiastic and want to play along with you. Yeah. And we need a pole.
And it already has to be up. The pole has to be up already.
Well, in the case of, see, so far, our nest boxes are on property owned by Ramsey County, Washington County, Afton State Parks of the state, and the Belleville Conservancy. And all of those landlords have fortunately been very helpful and been willing to get a pole and put it in the ground for us. So that's kind of a hurdle that we face.
Mhm.
All right. Some people are thinking of some more questions here for you,
Okay.
Julian.
Okay.
What about Cedar Creek? That was a question from Judy and Mary. And Mary,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
I think the year before last, at the annual MOU paper session, Minnesota Ornithologist Union, which happens every year on the first Saturday in December, someone gave a presentation about Cedar Creek.
Mhm.
And in the question and answer period, I asked, well, let's see, it might have been specifically about red-headed woodpeckers. I'm not sure. But anyway, I asked if there were any kestrels nesting there at Cedar Creek. And the answer was yes, there was one pair nesting in a tree cavity at Cedar Creek.
Could that be a place for putting additional boxes?
It could be, but again, that's farther than I would like to have to travel.
Mhm.
You know, because there is a fair amount of travel back and forth, and we have these monitors, but I'm kind of a monitor at large. I like to go around. Well, first of all, I just love seeing kestrels, and so, but I like to go around from time to time to all the boxes and see what's happening.
Mhm.
And so Cedar Creek is farther than I would like to go.
All right. Well, you're getting a lot of praise on the chat for your presentation, so you should take a look at that before we close things down. But I'm just going to clap one more time for Julian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Oh,
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off, guys.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.